The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of the fleet's return. Representatives from every major civilization crowded into the council chamber, their usual dignified composure replaced by barely controlled panic. Admiral Zexathara stood before the assembly, still struggling to process what she had witnessed. "They created matter from nothing," she reported, her voice hollow. A moon, complete with complex mineral structures, appeared in empty space without any visible technology or energy expenditure. Our best scientists estimate that such an act should require the total energy output of a mid-sized star. The Valdorian ambassador's crystalline form flickered through rapid color changes. "Impossible. You must have been deceived by some form of advanced holographic projection." "The moon is real," Admiral Zexathara insisted. "We have mineral samples. Atomic analysis confirms genuine matter with proper quantum structures. Either the humans have learned to manipulate reality itself, or they have technology so advanced that it appears magical." Councillor Thex of the Zerion Collective raised one of his many arms. "Perhaps they discovered some form of dimensional manipulation? Our theoretical physics suggests that matter might be borrowed from parallel realities." "Does it matter how they did it?" interrupted Ambassador Veltar of the Hegemony. "The fact remains that they demonstrated capabilities that make our entire civilization vulnerable. If they can create matter, they can presumably destroy it just as easily." The chamber erupted in heated discussions as representatives debated responses ranging from immediate surrender to preemptive strikes. Admiral Zexathara watched the chaos with growing dread. She had commanded fleets for 3 centuries, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for an enemy that could casually violate the fundamental laws of physics. "Order!" The voice of High Counselor Nexus boomed through the chamber, immediately silencing all conversation. The ancient being, whose species had achieved interstellar travel when most others were still discovering fire, commanded absolute respect. "We must approach this situation with wisdom, not fear." "Wisdom?" The Korthian Prime Minister's mandibles clicked angrily. "They possess godlike powers and our combined fleets are useless against them. What wisdom applies to such a situation?" High Counselor Nexus fixed the Prime Minister with a gaze that had witnessed the rise and fall of a dozen galactic civilizations. "The wisdom to remember that power and intent are different things. The humans could have destroyed our fleet instantly, yet they chose to demonstrate their capabilities without causing harm. This suggests they are sincere about their peaceful intentions. Or they're playing with us," Admiral Zexathara muttered. "A cat doesn't immediately kill a mouse." "Then we must determine which scenario is correct," High Counselor Nexus declared. "I propose we send a diplomatic mission to Earth, a small group of representatives who can engage with these evolved humans and assess their true intentions." The chamber fell silent as representatives considered this proposal. The idea of voluntarily entering the sphere of influence of beings with godlike powers was terrifying. But the alternative, living in perpetual fear of an unknown threat, was equally unacceptable. Who would be willing to undertake such a mission? Asked the Valdorian ambassador. "I will go." Everyone turned to stare at Admiral Zexathara in shock. The military leader who had spent her career preparing for conflict with humans was volunteering to walk directly into their hands. "Admiral," the Korthian Prime Minister protested, "you cannot seriously consider—" "I led the final assault on Earth 1,000 years ago," Admiral Zexathara interrupted. "My people bear the primary responsibility for driving humanity to extinction. If anyone should face whatever consequences arise from their return, it should be me." High Counselor Nexus studied her with approval. "Your courage is noted, Admiral, but this mission requires diplomats, not warriors. I will lead the delegation myself." The announcement sent shockwaves through the chamber. High Counselor Nexus had not left the council chambers in over 2 centuries, and his decision to personally undertake this mission demonstrated the gravity of the situation. "I will accompany you," Admiral Zexathara stated firmly, along with small delegations from each major civilization. "If we're going to determine humanity's intentions, we need representatives who can speak with authority for their people." Over the next several hours, the mission was carefully planned. A small diplomatic vessel would carry 12 representatives, each authorized to negotiate on behalf of their respective civilizations. They would approach Earth openly, broadcasting their peaceful intentions and requesting formal diplomatic contact. As the harmony of voices, a ship specifically designed for diplomatic missions, approached the Sol system, its passengers felt the weight of galactic history pressing upon them. Admiral Zexathara stood on the bridge watching Earth grow larger on the main display. The planet looked exactly as it had in historical records: blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. Yet somehow it also looked fundamentally different in ways she couldn't define. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced. Marcus Chen appeared on the main screen, but this time he was standing in what appeared to be a vast garden. Behind him, impossible structures stretched toward the sky, their forms shifting subtly as if they existed in a state of controlled flux. "Welcome, honored representatives," Marcus said warmly. "We are pleased that you chose dialogue over conflict. Please land at the coordinates we're transmitting. We have prepared a place for our discussions." The landing site was unlike anything in the galactic database. The platform they descended toward seemed to be made of crystallized light, perfectly solid yet translucent. Gardens surrounded the landing area, filled with plants that shifted colors as they watched and trees that appeared to be growing and fast forward. As the diplomatic party disembarked, they were greeted by a group of humans who radiated the same unsettling perfection they had observed before. High Counselor Nexus stepped forward, his ancient frame somehow managing to convey dignity despite the overwhelming strangeness of their surroundings. "We come seeking understanding," he declared formally. "Our civilizations must know your intentions toward the galaxy." Marcus smiled and gestured toward a structure that seemed to be constructing itself as they watched. "Of course, we understand your concerns completely. After all, we remember quite clearly what happened the last time we coexisted with galactic civilization. You were different then," Admiral Zexathara said bluntly. "Aggressive, expansionist, unwilling to accept any form of galactic governance. Your species started 3 separate wars before the final coalition action." "Yes," Marcus agreed sadly. "We were young then and frightened and trapped by our own limitations. We saw the universe as a place of scarcity where we had to fight for every resource, every advantage. We couldn't imagine alternatives to the patterns of conflict that had defined our history." "And now?" High Counselor Nexus asked. Marcus gestured to the world around them. "Now we understand that scarcity is an illusion created by limited perspective. The universe is infinite in all the ways that matter. Energy, matter, space-time, all can be shaped by will and understanding. We no longer need to take anything from others because we can create whatever we require." Admiral Zexathara felt a chill despite the pleasant temperature. "You're describing capabilities that approach omnipotence. How can any mortal species achieve such power without being corrupted by it?" Marcus's expression grew serious. "That is perhaps the most important question you could ask, Admiral. The answer is that we nearly were corrupted. During our 1,000-year journey, we faced temptations that would have turned us into the very tyrants you fear. We overcame them only by fundamentally changing what it means to be human." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "We learned that true power comes not from the ability to impose your will upon reality, but from the wisdom to know when not to use that ability. We became powerful precisely because we chose to remain human in all the ways that truly matter." 3 days after the impossible transmission, the largest military fleet in galactic history assembled at the edge of the Sol system. Admiral Zexathara commanded the operation from her flagship, the Inevitable Consequence, a massive dreadnought that had never known defeat. Around her, ships from every major empire formed defensive formations, their weapon systems charged and ready. The fleet contained over 10,000 vessels, representing the combined might of civilizations that had spent centuries learning to work together in the aftermath of the Coalition War. Corthian battlecruisers bristled with plasma cannons, while Valdorian crystal ships hummed with energy that could shatter moons. The hegemony had contributed their infamous siege platforms, mobile space stations capable of sterilizing entire worlds. "All ships report ready, Admiral," her tactical officer announced. Long-range sensors confirm the presence of a planetary body in Earth's former orbital position. Mass and composition match historical records for pre-destruction Earth. Admiral Zexathara studied the tactical display with growing unease. Everything about the situation defied logic. The planet that had appeared was not just similar to Earth. According to their scans, it was identical down to the continental arrangements and atmospheric composition. It was as if someone had reached back through time and plucked the original Earth from history. "Sir, we're detecting artificial structures on the surface," Cities, but not matching any known human architectural patterns from our historical records. Show me. The main display shifted to show high-resolution images of Earth's surface. The Admiral's mandibles clicked in surprise. The cities were clearly of human construction, but they were unlike anything in the galactic database. Structures that seemed to flow like water yet maintained perfect geometric precision stretched across continents. Buildings that appeared to exist partially in normal space while extending into dimensions that their sensors couldn't properly map. "Admiral," her science officer called out, voice tight with confusion, "we're detecting energy signatures that don't match any known technology. The entire planet appears to be generating power on a scale that should be impossible without a stellar-class fusion reactor." Before Admiral Zexthera could respond, every screen in the fleet simultaneously displayed the same image. Marcus Chen appeared again, but this time he was not alone. Behind him stood other humans, and the Admiral felt her confidence begin to crack as she studied them. They looked perfectly normal at first glance, but there was something subtly wrong about their appearance. They moved with a fluid grace that suggested perfect control over their physical forms. Their eyes held depths that seemed far older than their apparent ages. Most unsettling of all, they stood without any visible technology or weapons, yet projected an aura of absolute confidence in the face of the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever assembled. "Admiral Zexthera," Marcus spoke directly to her, though she had given no indication of her identity or location. "We appreciate your caution, but this show of force is unnecessary. We have no hostile intentions toward any of your civilizations." The Admiral felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. Not only had the human addressed her by name, but the transmission was appearing simultaneously on every ship in the fleet, including vessels with completely isolated communication systems. "How are you doing this?" she demanded. "Our communications are secured and encrypted." Marcus smiled with what appeared to be genuine warmth. "During our absence, we learned that the universe is far more interconnected than most species realize. Information, consciousness, energy. These things flow through pathways that your current science barely acknowledges. We've simply learned to navigate those pathways." "Impossible," the Valdorian fleet commander interjected over the communication channel. "No known technology can bypass our security protocols." "You're quite right," Marcus agreed. "No known technology can do what we're doing. But we are no longer limited by known technology." Admiral Zexthera felt the first stirrings of real fear. The humans were speaking about capabilities that bordered on the metaphysical, yet they demonstrated those capabilities with casual ease. If they could effortlessly penetrate the most advanced communication networks in the galaxy, what else could they do? "What do you want from us?" she asked, deciding that direct confrontation was preferable to mounting uncertainty. "Nothing that you wouldn't freely give to any peaceful neighbor," Marcus replied. "We simply want to exist. We have no interest in your territories, your resources, or your political structures. We've moved beyond such needs. Beyond such needs." The Hegemony Admiral's voice boomed across the communication channel. "Every sentient species requires resources for survival. Every civilization needs territory and raw materials." Marcus paused, seeming to consider his words carefully. 1,000 years ago, you would have been correct. But during our time away, we learned to derive what we need from sources that don't compete with your civilizations. We've learned to draw energy from quantum fluctuations, to manipulate matter at the subatomic level, to exist in harmony with the fundamental forces of the universe rather than struggling against them. The silence that followed was profound. What the human was describing sounded like the theoretical end state of technological development that most civilizations considered impossible to achieve. If humans had actually reached such a level of advancement, the implications were staggering. "Prove it," Admiral Zexthera challenged. "Show us this supposed mastery over natural forces." Marcus nodded sadly, as if he had hoped to avoid such a demonstration. "Very well. But understand that we do this reluctantly, and only to prevent misunderstandings that could lead to unnecessary conflict." He raised his hand, and the universe seemed to hold its breath. Every sensor in the fleet simultaneously registered readings that should have been impossible. Space itself appeared to ripple around the human fleet, as if reality was becoming fluid. Then, without any visible effort or technology, a small moon materialized in empty space between the human planet and the galactic fleet. Not constructed, not transported, literally created from nothing, complete with a stable orbit and its own gravitational field. The tactical displays across the fleet went haywire as officers tried to process what they had witnessed. Matter creation on such a scale required energy outputs that exceeded the total power generation of most star systems, yet the humans had accomplished it as casually as breathing. The moon is completely stable and will remain in orbit indefinitely, Marcus explained calmly. We've also seeded it with a variety of rare minerals that your civilizations value. Consider it a gift, and evidence of our genuine desire for peaceful coexistence. Admiral Zexathara stared at the readings, her mind struggling to accept what she was seeing. The moon was real, composed of actual matter with proper atomic structures. Somehow the humans had converted energy into matter on a massive scale, violating every known law of physics in the process. "This is impossible," she whispered. "No," Marcus corrected gently. "It's simply beyond your current understanding. 1,000 years ago, your ancestors would have considered your own technology impossible. We've simply had more time to explore the possibilities that the universe offers." The implications hit Admiral Zexathara like a physical blow. If humans could create matter at will, they could presumably destroy it just as easily. They could unmake entire fleets, entire worlds, with the same casual gesture that had created the moon. The military force surrounding Earth was not a threat to the humans, it was completely irrelevant. What are you now?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Marcus's expression grew thoughtful. "We are what we chose to become when faced with extinction. We are what any species might become if they were willing to abandon their limitations and embrace the infinite possibilities that existence offers. We are still human, Admiral, but we are human unlimited." The transmission ended, leaving the most powerful military force in galactic history, staring at a small moon that represented the complete obsolescence of everything they thought they knew about power, technology, and the nature of reality itself. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the impossible readings flashed across every screen in the massive crystalline amphitheater. Admiral Zexathara of the Korthian Empire gripped her command tablet so tightly that her chitinous fingers left permanent marks in the metal. The other representatives from the dozen most powerful civilizations in known space stared at the data with expressions ranging from disbelief to terror. "Confirm." "These readings immediately," she barked at her science officer, her voice echoing through the chamber's perfect acoustics. "Confirmed, Admiral. Multiple independent sensor arrays are detecting the same phenomenon. A planet has appeared in the Sol system where Earth once orbited." The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from species that had barely spoken to each other in centuries suddenly found themselves in heated discussions. The Valdorian ambassador, his crystalline body refracting the chamber's light into prismatic patterns, stepped forward. "This is impossible. Earth was completely destroyed 1,000 years ago. We all witnessed it. The humans triggered their planet's core collapse rather than surrender to the coalition forces." Ambassador Veltar of the hegemony nodded his massive head, causing his ceremonial neck rings to chime ominously. The entire Sol system was quarantined afterward. "Nothing but debris and radiation has existed there for 10 centuries. My own people have monitored it regularly." Admiral Zexathara's mandibles clicked nervously as she processed the implications. The human extinction had been the defining moment that allowed the current galactic order to establish itself. Humans had been the most stubborn, unpredictable, and dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. Their refusal to submit to any form of galactic governance had led to the Coalition War, the bloodiest conflict in recorded history. "Sir," her science officer interrupted, "we're receiving transmissions from the Sol system." The Admiral's blood ran cold. "What kind of transmissions?" "They appear to be human in origin. The language patterns match archived human communications from before the extinction." The chamber's chaos immediately died as every being present turned to stare at the Korthian delegation. Admiral Zexathara felt the weight of 1,000 different gazes upon her. As the military leader of the species that had led the final assault on Earth, she bore the responsibility of dealing with this impossible situation. "Put the transmission through," she commanded, her voice barely steady. The massive holographic display at the center of the chamber flickered to life, and a figure appeared that sent shockwaves through every witness. It was unmistakably human, a bipedal creature with the characteristic smooth skin and expressive features that had haunted galactic nightmares for centuries. The being appeared young by human standards, with dark hair and wearing some form of simple white garment. "Greetings to the Galactic Council," the human said, speaking in perfect galactic standard. "I am Marcus Chen, speaker for the returned Earth. We are aware that our reappearance has caused some concern. We wish to formally announce our return to this galaxy and request an audience with your governing body." The silence that followed was deafening. Several representatives had actually taken steps backward, while others appeared frozen in shock. The Valdorian ambassador's crystalline form was cycling through colors rapidly, indicating extreme agitation. Admiral Zexithara found her voice first. "This is impossible. Humans are extinct. Earth was destroyed. We have verified records of this event." The human's expression remained calm, almost amused. "Yes, we are aware of the circumstances surrounding our departure. We have been observing your civilization's development during our absence. We chose to return now because we believe the galaxy has reached a level of maturity that might allow for more productive interactions." "Observing?" The hegemony ambassador's voice boomed across the chamber. "From where? Every system in the galaxy has been mapped and colonized. There is nowhere you could have hidden an entire civilization." Marcus smiled, and somehow that simple expression made every being in the chamber deeply uncomfortable. "We learned much during our 1,000-year absence, Ambassador Veltar. Space and time are far more flexible than your current science understands. We have been very close, yet impossibly far away." The implications of his words began to sink in. If humans had somehow survived and had been watching the galaxy for a millennium, what had they learned? What had they become? The species that had nearly destroyed half the galaxy before choosing extinction over surrender had returned, and they were speaking with a confidence that suggested they no longer feared the coalition that had once driven them to desperate measures. "What do you want?" Admiral Zexithara asked bluntly, abandoning diplomatic protocol, initially simply to exist peacefully. "We have no interest in territorial expansion or resource acquisition. Our needs are quite different now than they were before our departure. However, we are aware that our return may cause instability in current power structures. We hope to address these concerns through dialogue rather than conflict." The Korthian admiral felt her auxiliary hearts beginning to race. The human's tone was reasonable, even friendly, but there was an underlying current of absolute confidence that suggested they were not making a request, so much as informing the Council of decisions already made. "And if the Council determines that your presence poses a threat to galactic stability?" she pressed. Marcus's smile never wavered, but something in his eyes changed. For just a moment, Admiral Zexithara glimpsed something vast and terrifying behind the human's casual demeanor. "Then I suppose we would have to address that situation as it develops, but I hope it won't come to that. We remember the cost of our last departure quite clearly. We would prefer not to repeat such drastic measures." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Admiral Zexithara stared at the empty holographic display, her mind racing through tactical scenarios. Every military calculation she could perform led to the same conclusion. If humans had survived for 1,000 years while remaining hidden from the most advanced sensor networks in the galaxy, they had clearly developed capabilities far beyond current understanding. The Valdorian ambassador spoke first, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "We need to mobilize every fleet in the galaxy. If humans have returned with unknown technology, they represent an existential threat to our entire civilization." But Admiral Zexithara was already thinking beyond simple military responses. The human had mentioned observing their development and waiting for maturity. That suggested long-term planning and patience that was utterly unlike the impulsive, aggressive humans of the past. Whatever they had become during their absence, they were no longer the same species that had fought the coalition war. "Contact High Command," she ordered quietly. "Tell them that everything has changed. The humans are back, and we have no idea what that means for any of us." The meeting hall that materialized around the diplomatic party defied every principle of architecture they knew. Walls flowed like water while maintaining perfect structural integrity, and the ceiling showed not the sky above, but what appeared to be a direct view into deep space, complete with slowly rotating galaxies. Seats formed themselves from the floor as each representative approached, perfectly sized and shaped for their individual physiologies. Marcus gestured for them to sit while other humans took positions around the chamber. Admiral Zexathara noticed that despite their casual manner, the humans positioned themselves with tactical precision that spoke of military awareness. These beings might claim to have moved beyond conflict, but they had not forgotten its lessons. You spoke of changing what it means to be human. High Counselor Nexus began. We require clarification. Are you still the same species that once inhabited this world? A woman stepped forward, introducing herself as Dr. Sarah Martinez. Unlike Marcus, she carried herself with the bearing of a scientist, and when she spoke, her words carried the weight of careful analysis. Biologically, we remain genetically human, she explained. Our DNA, our basic physiology, our neural structures, all essentially unchanged. But we have learned to access capabilities that were always present but dormant in our species. Impossible, the Xerion representative interjected. We have studied human genetics extensively. There is nothing in your biological structure that could account for the abilities you've demonstrated. Dr. Martinez smiled. That's because you're looking for mechanisms in the wrong place. The universe is far more interconnected than most species realize. Consciousness isn't merely a product of neural activity. It's a fundamental force that can interact directly with the quantum structures underlying reality. The Valdorian ambassadors, crystalline form shifted to deep purple, indicating skepticism. You're suggesting that thought alone can manipulate matter and energy? Not thought alone, Marcus corrected. Understanding will. The recognition that the boundaries between consciousness and reality are largely artificial constructs created by limited perception. Admiral Zexathara leaned forward. This sounds like mysticism, not science. The distinction between the two is less clear than you might think, Dr. Martinez replied. Your own quantum physics already demonstrates that observation affects reality at the subatomic level. We simply learn to extend that principle to larger scales. A new voice joined the conversation as another human approached. This one introduced himself as Commander James Harrison, and his bearing immediately commanded Admiral Zexathara's attention. Here was someone who understood warfare, regardless of whatever other abilities he might possess. Admiral, he said, addressing her directly, I can see you're struggling with the tactical implications of what we're telling you. Let me be direct. We could end any conflict before it began, but we choose not to engage in conflict at all. Why? Admiral Zexathara asked bluntly. If you possess such overwhelming advantages, why not simply impose your will on the galaxy? Commander Harrison's expression grew sad. Because we remember what it felt like to be powerless against overwhelming force. We remember the desperation that drove us to destroy our own world, rather than submit to conquest. We would never inflict such feelings on others. Besides, Marcus added, what would be the point? We no longer need territory, resources, or subjects. We've learned to find fulfillment in creation rather than conquest, in understanding rather than domination. High Counselor Nexus had remained silent throughout this exchange, but now he spoke with the weight of his ancient wisdom. Show us your society. If you truly have transcended the limitations that drive conflict, we must see how you live. The humans exchanged glances, and Admiral Zexathara caught something that might have been uncertainty. For the first time since their return, the humans seemed less than completely confident. That is more complex than you might imagine, Dr. Martinez said carefully. Our society exists on multiple levels simultaneously. What you would recognize as our physical civilization is only the most visible layer. The walls around them became transparent, revealing the impossible city stretching beyond. The diplomatic party gasped as they saw structures that existed in constant flux, buildings that extended through dimensions their eyes couldn't properly process, and humans moving through the cityscape in ways that seemed to ignore gravity and distance. We exist simultaneously in normal space-time and in what we call the deep current, Marcus explained, the fundamental flow of information and energy that connects all things. Most of our actual society takes place there, in realms of pure thought and will. You're describing a form of collective consciousness, the Xerion representative said, his multiple eyes widening with understanding. Not collective, Commander Harrison corrected. Connected. We remain individuals, but we share experiences and knowledge in ways that your species might find difficult to comprehend. When one of us learns something, all of us can access that knowledge. When one of us faces a challenge, all of us can offer assistance. Admiral Zexathara felt a chill of recognition. That's how you knew my name when we first communicated. You have access to all galactic information networks. We have access to information itself, Dr. Martinez confirmed. The deep current carries all knowledge, all communication, all thought. We learned to navigate it during our exile. And during that exile, High Counselor Nexus said slowly, "You have been watching us, learning from us, judging us." The humans exchanged looks that confirmed his suspicions. Marcus finally nodded. "Yes, we have observed your civilization's development for 1,000 years. We have seen your wars, your alliances, your struggles with the same challenges that once drove us to the brink of extinction." "And what have you concluded?" Admiral Zexathara asked, though she dreaded the answer. "That you are not ready," Commander Harrison said simply. "Your species still see the universe as a place of scarcity and conflict. You still believe that power comes from the ability to impose your will on others. You are still trapped by the same limitations that once defined us." The chamber fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. The humans were not just offering peaceful coexistence, they were sitting in judgment on galactic civilization itself. Not ready for what? High Counselor Nexus demanded. Marcus gestured, and the space around them filled with images of impossible beauty. Galaxies reshaped into works of art, stars dancing in perfect harmony, entire civilizations existing in states of perfect cooperation and unlimited growth. "For transcendence," he said quietly. "For the next stage of existence that awaits all intelligent life. We learned to move beyond our limitations because we were forced to choose between evolution and extinction. You have not yet faced that choice. Are you saying we must face the same crisis you did?" Admiral Zexthara asked. "No," Dr. Martinez said firmly. "We hope you can find another path. But our observations suggest that most species require some form of fundamental challenge to abandon the patterns of behavior that keep them trapped in cycles of conflict and scarcity." Commander Harrison stepped forward. "That's why we returned, Admiral. Not to conquer or to rule, but to serve as an example. To show you what becomes possible when a species chooses cooperation over competition, creation over destruction, understanding over ignorance." "And if we refuse to change?" High Counselor Nexus asked quietly. The humans' expressions grew somber. Marcus spoke for all of them when he said, "Then you will eventually destroy yourselves just as we nearly did. The universe is vast and patient, but it does not tolerate stagnation forever. Species that cannot transcend their limitations eventually face extinction. But that choice remains yours to make." Dr. Martinez added quickly, "We will not force change upon you. We will simply exist as proof that change is possible, should you choose to pursue it." The diplomatic mission extended far longer than anyone had anticipated. For 3 weeks, the galactic representatives remained on Earth, witnessing demonstrations of human capabilities that shattered their understanding of what was possible. They observed humans manipulating matter with thought alone, communicating across vast distances without technology, and accessing information from sources that seemed to exist outside normal spacetime. Admiral Zexathara found herself spending most of her time with Commander Harrison, drawn to someone who understood the military implications of what humanity had become. During one of their conversations as they stood in a garden where flowers sang in harmonious melodies, she finally asked the question that had been haunting her. "How do you restrain yourselves? With such power, how do you resist the temptation to simply fix everything according to your will?" Harrison considered the question carefully before answering. "Do you have children, Admiral?" The question caught her off guard. "I have spawned twice. Young ones who serve in the fleet. Then you understand the difficulty of watching someone you care about make mistakes that you could easily prevent. The temptation to intervene, to use your superior knowledge and experience to guide their choices." Admiral Zexthara's mandibles clicked in understanding. "But such intervention prevents them from learning and growing on their own." "Exactly. We learned that lesson the hard way during our transformation. Some of us believed we should use our new abilities to reshape reality, according to our vision of perfection. We spent decades debating whether we had the right or even the obligation to impose our solutions on problems we could easily solve. What decided the matter?" Harrison gestured to the singing flowers around them. "We realized that growth requires struggle. Consciousness requires choice. If we solved every problem for other species, we would rob them of the experiences that allow them to evolve. We would become cosmic tyrants even with the best of intentions." Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of Dr. Martinez, who carried news that would change everything. "Commander Admiral, you need to see this. We've detected something in the outer galaxy that requires immediate attention." They were transported instantly to what appeared to be a control center, though it contained no visible technology. Instead, humans stood in contemplative poses while information flowed around them in streams of pure light. The data they were processing showed a region of space that made Admiral Zexathera's blood run cold. "What am I looking at?" she demanded. "A void zone," Dr. Martinez explained grimly. "A region where space-time itself is being consumed by something that should not exist in this reality." The Admiral studied the readings with growing horror. An entire sector containing dozens of star systems was simply gone. Not destroyed, not collapsed into black holes, but erased as if it had never existed. And the zone of non-existence was expanding. "How is this possible?" she whispered. Marcus materialized beside them, his usual calm demeanor replaced by visible concern. "We had hoped this wouldn't happen for several more centuries. It appears our return has accelerated certain cosmic processes." "What kind of processes?" Admiral Zexathera demanded. "The universe is not a static system," Marcus explained. "It evolves, grows, changes according to the consciousness that inhabits it. As intelligent life develops more sophisticated understanding of reality, reality itself becomes more complex and unstable." Dr. Martinez nodded grimly. "Our transformation created ripples in the fundamental structure of spacetime. Other entities, other forms of consciousness have noticed these ripples. Some of them are not friendly to biological life." "You're saying our universe is under attack?" Admiral Zexathera asked, struggling to process the concept. "Not attack," Commander Harrison corrected. "Digestion. There are forms of consciousness that exist in higher dimensions, entities that feed on the ordered structures of reality itself. Our transformation sent out signals that attracted their attention. The implications hit Admiral Zexathera like a physical blow. You brought this upon us. Your evolution has doomed the galaxy. Yes and no, Marcus said sadly. This was always going to happen eventually. The universe cannot support infinite growth without attracting the attention of predators from higher dimensions. Our transformation simply moved up the timeline. High Counselor Nexus, who had been monitoring the conversation through means Admiral Zexathera couldn't understand, suddenly appeared among them. How long do we have? At current expansion rates, the Void Zone will reach the galactic core in approximately 50 standard years, Dr. Martinez reported. All life in this galaxy will be extinct long before that. Unless, the High Counselor prompted. Marcus exchanged glances with his companions before answering. Unless the intelligent species of this galaxy undergo the same transformation we did. Evolved consciousness can resist dimensional predation, but the transformation must be willing, and it must be universal. Admiral Zexathera felt the crushing weight of cosmic irony. You're saying we must become like you or face extinction. We're saying you must become what you were always meant to become, Commander Harrison corrected gently. Every intelligent species faces this choice eventually. Most choose extinction rather than change. Because the change is so fundamental, Dr. Martinez added. It requires abandoning everything that defines your current understanding of existence. Most species cannot let go of their limitations voluntarily. High Counselor Nexus studied the expanding void zone with ancient eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. What exactly would this transformation require? First, complete cooperation between all intelligent species, Marcus began. The process cannot work if even one major civilization refuses to participate. Second, the abandonment of resource-based economics and territorial thinking. Third, the development of consciousness-based technology that can interface directly with quantum reality. Impossible, Admiral Zexathera said immediately. The Korthian Empire would never abandon territorial sovereignty. The hegemony would never give up their economic advantages. You're asking us to fundamentally change everything about how our civilizations operate. Yes, Marcus agreed, because everything about how your civilizations currently operate is what prevents you from surviving what's coming. Commander Harrison stepped forward. Admiral, you've seen what we can do. You've witnessed capabilities that your technology cannot explain or replicate. Do you believe we're lying about the threat? Admiral Zexathera studied the readings again, her tactical mind analyzing the inexorable advance of the Void Zone. No. But what you're asking for, has never been achieved in galactic history. Species don't abandon their fundamental nature overnight. Then they die, Dr. Martinez said bluntly. We've observed this pattern in other galaxies. Species that cannot transcend their limitations are eventually consumed by forces they cannot understand or resist. But you survived, High Counselor Nexus pointed out. If one species can achieve this transformation, others can as well. We survived because we had no choice, Marcus reminded him. Our world was literally dying around us. Faced with absolute extinction, we chose to become something new rather than nothing at all. You still have time to choose voluntarily what we were forced to choose in desperation. The chamber fell silent as the galactic representatives contemplated the impossible choice before them. Transformation or extinction, evolution or annihilation, change everything they knew about existence or watch reality itself, be consumed by entities from beyond the boundaries of normal space-time. How would we even begin such a process? Admiral Zexathara finally asked. Marcus smiled for the first time since revealing the threat. By going home and telling your people the truth, all of it. The nature of the threat, the requirements for survival, and the fact that humanity stands ready to help guide the transformation process. And if they refuse? Then we will stay here and remember what your civilizations accomplished before the end, Commander Harrison said quietly. We will preserve your cultures, your achievements, your stories, so that some trace of what you were will survive even after reality itself forgets you existed. Admiral Zexathara realized that humanity's return was not just a diplomatic crisis or a military challenge. It was the beginning of the most important choice any species could face, evolve or die. And the clock was already ticking. The emergency session of the Galactic Council that convened upon the diplomatic mission's return was unlike any in recorded history. For the first time, every member species sent their highest-ranking leaders rather than mere representatives. The chamber buzzed with tension as Admiral Zexathara presented her report, her words carrying the weight of galactic survival. The threat is real and immediate, she concluded, displaying the horrifying images of the expanding void zone. Our choice is transformation or extinction. There is no middle ground. The Korthian Prime Minister's mandibles clicked aggressively. You're asking us to trust the word of a species that nearly destroyed the galaxy once before. How do we know this isn't an elaborate scheme to force our submission? High Counselor Nexus, who had witnessed the evidence firsthand, fixed the Prime Minister with his ancient gaze. Because they could simply wait 50 years and inherit a galaxy cleansed of all competing life forms. If deception were their goal, they would have chosen a far less risky path. The transformation they describe is impossible, declared the Valdorian ambassador. Our entire civilization is built on crystal-based technology. Our neural structures are fundamentally different from mammalian brains. How could we possibly achieve the same consciousness expansion that humans claim to have undergone? Before anyone could answer, the chamber's lighting dimmed and Marcus Chen appeared as a holographic projection. But this time he was not alone. Representatives from over a dozen extinct species stood beside him, their forms shimmering with the same impossible perfection that characterized evolved humans. Forgive the intrusion, Marcus said, but we felt it important to address your concerns directly. Admiral Zexathara felt her auxiliary heart skip a beat. Those species, they're extinct. We have records of their destruction dating back thousands of years. A being that resembled the long-lost ethereal collective stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonies that touched the listeners' minds directly. Death is not the end for consciousness that has learned to transcend physical limitations. We achieved our transformation moments before our worlds were destroyed by the same cosmic forces now threatening your galaxy. Impossible, breathed the Zarian representative. The ethereals were consumed by their own star-going supernova. No form of life could survive such destruction. Physical life, no, the ethereal agreed. But consciousness that has learned to exist independently of matter can survive any physical catastrophe. We chose to join the human collective rather than face the emptiness of non-existence. Marcus gestured to the assembled beings. Every species faces the same choice eventually. Evolve beyond physical limitations or be consumed by forces beyond physical comprehension. We're not asking you to become human. We're asking you to become what you were always meant to become. The hegemony leader, whose massive frame dominated his section of the chamber, leaned forward aggressively. And what exactly does this transformation entail? You speak in abstracts and philosophy, but we need concrete information. Dr. Martinez materialized beside Marcus. The process begins with consciousness integration technology that allows individual minds to access the quantum substrate underlying reality. Once a sufficient number of individuals from each species achieves this connection, they can guide others through the transformation. How many individuals? Demanded the Corthian Prime Minister. Approximately 1% of your total population, Commander Harrison answered as he joined the projection. But they must be volunteers who fully understand and accept the implications of the change. What implications? Admiral Zexathera asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. The abandonment of individual ego consciousness in favor of connected consciousness, the evolved ethereal explained. You remain yourself, but you also become part of something far larger and more powerful than any individual mind. You're describing the destruction of everything that makes us who we are, the Feldorian ambassador protested. No, Marcus corrected gently. We're describing the expansion of everything that makes you who you are. Your memories, your personality, your individual perspective, all of these remain intact. But you also gain access to the memories, perspectives, and capabilities of every other evolved consciousness in the collective. The chamber erupted in heated debates as representatives argued over the implications. Some species were intrigued by the possibilities, while others recoiled from what they saw as the ultimate loss of autonomy. Admiral Zexathera listened to the chaos with growing despair. Even faced with extinction, the civilizations of the galaxy could not agree on a path forward. There is another consideration, High Counselor Nexus said, his ancient voice cutting through the arguments. Even if we agree to attempt this transformation, how do we know we can achieve it? Humans had 1,000 years to develop these capabilities. The void zone will reach us in 50. Dr. Martinez nodded. That's why we're offering direct assistance. Evolved consciousness can guide and accelerate the transformation process for others. What took us centuries to discover can be achieved in months with proper guidance. At what cost? The Zerian representative asked suspiciously. Full cooperation and trust, Commander Harrison answered bluntly. The process requires complete openness of mind and spirit. Any attempt to maintain secrets or hidden agendas will prevent the transformation from succeeding. Unacceptable, the Corthian Prime Minister declared immediately. Our military secrets, our technological advantages, these are what ensure our species' survival. Your species' survival now depends on abandoning those very concepts, Marcus pointed out. In a collective consciousness, there are no military secrets because there are no enemies. There are no technological advantages because all knowledge is shared freely. Admiral Zexathera studied the readings of the approaching void zone, her tactical mind running scenarios. How long do we have to decide? The process must begin within the next 10 years, Dr. Martinez reported. After that, the dimensional disruption caused by the approaching predators will make consciousness transformation impossible. 10 years to convince every major civilization to abandon everything they've ever believed about existence, Admiral Zexathera said grimly. Has any species ever succeeded at such a task? The evolved ethereal's form brightened. 3 species in this galaxy have already begun the process. The Zelanti Republic started consciousness integration experiments 6 months ago. The Frontier Worlds Alliance has established preliminary contact with the Deep Current. The Independent Systems Coalition has begun developing the necessary technologies. The announcement sent shockwaves through the chamber. 3 minor civilizations had already begun working with the humans without informing the Council. The galactic balance of power was shifting in ways that made traditional politics irrelevant. Why weren't we informed of these developments? The hegemony leader demanded. Because we knew you would try to prevent them, Marcus answered honestly, and because those civilizations chose to act based on evidence rather than politics. They understood that survival transcends sovereignty. This is intolerable, the Corthian Prime Minister raged. Secret agreements, hidden transformations. You're destabilizing the entire galactic order. The galactic order was already destined for destruction, Commander Harrison pointed out. We're offering an alternative that allows some version of your civilizations to survive. High Counselor Nexus raised his hand for silence. The question before us is simple. Do we face extinction proudly maintaining our current limitations, Or do we embrace an uncertain future that offers the possibility of survival? It's not that simple, Admiral Zexthera protested. You're asking us to trust beings whose capabilities we don't understand, whose motives we can't verify, whose very existence challenges everything we thought we knew about reality. Yes, Marcus agreed. We're asking you to trust us, just as we're trusting you to choose wisdom over fear, cooperation over competition, evolution over stagnation. The silence that followed was profound. Representatives from dozens of civilizations contemplated a choice that would determine not just their own fate, but the fate of all intelligent life in the galaxy. The humans waited patiently, their evolved consciousness allowing them to perceive the currents of fear, hope and desperation flowing through the chamber. Finally, High Counselor Nexus spoke for the assembled civilizations. We will need proof, demonstrations of the transformation process, evidence that consciousness evolution can preserve individual identity while granting collective capabilities. And you shall have it, Marcus promised. We will begin immediately with volunteer subjects from any civilization willing to participate. You can observe the entire process and verify that the transformed individuals retain their essential nature while gaining expanded capabilities. And if the process fails? Admiral Zexthera asked. Then we face extinction together, the evolved ethereal answered. But at least we will have chosen to try for something greater, rather than accepting inevitable destruction. 5 years after the first consciousness transformation trials began, Admiral Zexthera stood in what had once been her command center aboard the Inevitable Consequence. The ship still orbited Earth, but everything about it had changed. The metal corridors now pulsed with organic curves that responded to thought and emotion. Control panels had been replaced by direct neural interfaces that allowed crew members to commune with the ship's consciousness, for the vessel itself had achieved a form of awareness during the transformation process. The Admiral herself bore the marks of successful evolution. Her chitinous exterior now showed patterns of light that reflected her inner emotional state, and her consciousness could extend far beyond her physical form to touch the minds of others across vast distances. Yet she remained recognizably herself, still tactical, still cautious, still bearing the weight of command even as that command had expanded to encompass responsibilities beyond her previous imagination. Report on the galactic situation, she requested, not needing to speak aloud but choosing to maintain familiar patterns of behavior. Commander Harrison's presence touched her awareness before his physical form materialized in the chamber. Over the years, the boundaries between human and alien consciousness had blurred as species after species chose transformation over extinction. Harrison's evolved form now carried elements that reflected his interaction with dozens of different types of awareness. 17 major civilizations have achieved successful collective consciousness integration, he reported. The Korthian Empire completed their transformation last month, making Admiral Zexthera's people among the most recent to join us. And the holdouts? 3 civilizations continue to resist: the Valdorian Crystalline Republic, the Outer Rim Confederacy, and the Mechanist Union. They've established a defensive alliance and are actively preventing their populations from accessing transformation technologies. Admiral Zexthera felt a familiar pang of sadness. Despite 5 years of demonstrations, despite witnessing transformed individuals retain their personalities while gaining incredible capabilities, despite seeing the void zone's inexorable advance, some species still chose potential extinction over certain change. How long do they have? Marcus Chen's consciousness joined their conference, his presence carrying data streams that painted a stark picture. The void zone has consumed 40% of the outer galaxy. At current rates of expansion, it will reach the holdout civilizations within 18 months. And the core worlds? We have perhaps 5 years before the advancing non-existence reaches the galactic center. But that assumes we can establish a stable consciousness network capable of resisting dimensional predation. We're still missing critical mass for a truly effective defense. Dr. Martinez's awareness added new dimensions to their discussion, her scientific perspective illuminating the complex physics involved. The predator entities are not simply consuming matter and energy. They're erasing the possibility that matter and energy ever existed. Only consciousness that has learned to exist independently of physical substrate can resist such absolute negation. Admiral Zexathara accessed the collective memory banks, reviewing the transformation process her own people had undergone. The Korthian Empire's military structure had initially resisted consciousness integration, fearing the loss of command hierarchy and tactical advantage. But when volunteers began demonstrating the ability to coordinate fleet movements through pure thought, to share tactical knowledge instantaneously across vast distances, and to adapt strategies faster than any traditional military organization, even the most conservative commanders had recognized the advantages. "What about forced transformation?" she asked, though the question troubled her even as she voiced it. "Impossible," Marcus replied firmly. "Consciousness evolution requires willing participation. Any attempt to force the process results in either failure or the creation of incomplete beings that cannot survive the transition to collective awareness. Then we may have to accept that not all species will survive," Commander Harrison said sadly. "Some civilizations would rather face extinction than change their fundamental nature." "No." The voice that interrupted belonged to High Counselor Nexus, whose ancient consciousness had been among the first to successfully integrate with the collective. His transformation had been particularly dramatic, as his species' natural longevity had allowed him to accumulate vast stores of wisdom that now enriched the entire network. "There is another possibility." "Explain," Admiral Zexathara requested. "The holdout civilizations fear transformation because they believe it means losing their identity. But we have learned to preserve individual consciousness patterns within the collective framework. What if we could demonstrate that their societies, their cultures, their essential nature can survive and even thrive after evolution?" Dr. Martinez's excitement rippled through the network. "You're suggesting we recreate their civilizations within our collective consciousness? Show them that transformation enhances rather than destroys what makes them unique?" "Precisely. We have millions of evolved minds now, with capabilities that far exceed anything biological brains could achieve. We could model their entire societies, showing them exactly how their cultures would develop and flourish after consciousness integration." Marcus paused, his awareness cycling through vast calculations. The computational requirements would be enormous. We'd need to simulate billions of individual consciousness patterns, entire social structures, complex cultural evolution patterns spanning centuries. "But it's possible?" Admiral Zexathara pressed. "With our current collective capabilities, yes. But it would require the full participation of every evolved consciousness in the galaxy. No individual awareness could remain disconnected from the simulation network." The implications were staggering. The evolved civilizations would essentially merge into a single, galaxy-spanning consciousness for the duration of the simulation process. Individual identity would be preserved, but the boundaries between species, between cultures, between individual minds would become fluid and permeable. "How long would such a simulation take?" Commander Harrison asked. "Subjective time within the simulation could span millennia, but external time would be measured in months," Dr. Martinez calculated. "We could show the holdout civilizations the full development of their species over thousands of years of post-transformation existence." Admiral Zexathara felt the weight of decision pressing upon them all. "And if they still refuse after seeing the simulation? Then we attempt to preserve what we can of their cultures before the void zone reaches them," High Counselor Nexus said quietly. "At least their achievements, their stories, their unique perspectives would survive even if their physical forms do not." "There's something else," Marcus added, his consciousness touching deep currents of cosmic awareness. "Our observations suggest that consciousness evolution is not unique to this galaxy. Other regions of space-time have faced similar challenges. If we succeed in preserving galactic civilization through transformation, we may be able to establish contact with other evolved collectives." "You mean we wouldn't be alone?" Admiral Zexathara asked, the concept opening vast new possibilities in her mind. "The universe is far larger and more complex than any single galaxy," Commander Harrison confirmed. "Consciousness that learns to transcend physical limitations discovers that existence extends far beyond what biological senses can perceive." Dr. Martinez's scientific curiosity sent ripples of excitement through the network. "We could become part of a cosmic community of evolved civilizations. The knowledge, the perspectives, the possibilities. First, we must ensure our own survival," High Counselor Nexus reminded them, "and the survival of every species willing to make the choice for evolution. Admiral Zexthera made her decision. Begin the simulation. Show the holdout civilizations what they could become. Give them the gift of seeing their own potential future. And if they still choose extinction over evolution, then we honor their choice while preserving what we can of what they were, she replied. But we give them every possible opportunity to choose life over death, growth over stagnation, connection over isolation. The great work began immediately. Across the galaxy, evolved consciousnesses linked together in the most ambitious project ever attempted by intelligent life. They would recreate entire civilizations within the realm of pure thought, modeling every possible future for species that still clung to their limitations. As the simulation networks activated, Admiral Zexthera felt her individual awareness expand to encompass perspectives from thousands of different species. She remained herself, but she also became part of something vast and wonderful, a collective mind capable of holding the full complexity of galactic civilization within its thoughts. The future remained uncertain. The Void Zone continued its advance. Cosmic predators hunted through dimensions beyond normal perception, and 3 civilizations still chose isolation over integration. But for the first time since humanity's return, Admiral Zexthera felt genuine hope. They were no longer just individual species struggling alone against incomprehensible forces. They had become something new, something greater than the sum of their parts. A galactic consciousness capable of facing